Hey guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining me for another one of my videos today. So today is slightly different and is the start of my Spiritual Queens Badass podcast series. So I'm going to be sharing with you the videos to some of my favorite interviews from my podcast, Spiritual Queens Badass Podcast, that is available on iTunes, Spotify, Anacast, and anywhere that you can listen to podcasts. So today's interview is with none other than Example, ELLIOT GLEAVE. So Example, I have loved for many years. As you will see in this interview, I have loved his music for about 12, 13 years now and had the pleasure of meeting him through my love of his music a few times. So to have him here on the podcast talking all things business, creativity, the music industry, and running your own business as well and doing things your own way as a creative was such an honor and such a pleasure. So I really hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did having this conversation with Example. And of course, I will put all the links below to Example's work and where you can listen to all of my podcast episodes, including my solo cast and other interviews with amazing people in the spiritual and wellness industry. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me for another one of my Spiritual Queens Badass podcast episodes today. I am super excited for our next guest, who is Mr. ELLIOT GLEAVE, or you may know him as Example. So ELLIOT is better known by his stage name Example. He's an English musician, singer, songwriter, rapper, and record producer. Example first found success with the release of his second studio album, Won't Go Quietly, back in 2010, which peaked at #1 on the UK dance chart. You may also know ELLIOT for his incredible #1 chart-topping songs, Change the Way You Kiss Me and Kickstars. So for one, I am so excited to have you here today, ELLIOT, because you know I've loved your music for many years. So thank you so much for being here.
I've seen your name pop up on my Insta and Twitter for years. Maybe, I don't know, it feels like maybe 3 or 4 years that maybe I've been replying to you, or, you know, because sometimes you're just complimentary about stuff, and other times you might just tag me in something randomly. So you're obviously, you know, you like the music, but then I sense that you know, chatting to you, because your name popped up, when you asked me to do this, because I get a lot of requests to do random radio shows or random podcasts, I often think, do I need to do this? Is it worth it? And it's not about all me. I think, can I help someone, or is this relevant to me? Have I got anything to say on the issue? Would I want to listen to the podcast? But in your case, I think because your name, I just kept thinking of Mumford and Sons, and obviously your name kept popping up. And I thought, when you think, oh, I've had interactions with this person, or they've been on my radar for a while, and vice versa, it just feels like a natural thing, you know? Yeah. Like, and obviously I did some research on you and looked at your numbers, and I was like, oh, that's quite impressive. And then I was like, really? Does she want me to fit in? Where does she see me fitting in? But then I thought, I spoke to Erin about it, my wife. I was like, well, you know, I like my fitness, I like my yoga, I like my meditation, you know, and we were just talking off camera then briefly, and you said, how is Erin? Because obviously she's been ill and we were meant to do this before. And today she was like hot and cold and having headaches and all sorts. And she was like, what is this? Is this period pains? Is this like, have I got the flu? You know, is it a lack of sleep? Have I been training too hard? And we've been, even though it's Australia and it's not as cold as England, our swimming pool at the moment, which is in the shade all day, it's Brisbane's winter, and it drops to 16 degrees, you know. But our swimming pool's about 6 degrees, and we've got a sauna downstairs in the garage, which we never use. So over the last few weeks, we've been doing like 70-degree saunas, then jumping into the 6-degree pool.
You are very brave. It
stops the body and, you know, gets rid of all your toxins and revitalizes you. And she did it today. She was just like, stuff it. I've been sick for 3 days. I've got nothing to lose. She went in the sauna, then in the pool, sauna, then pool. And she feels fine.
Amazing. Yeah. And sometimes it is like looking after that well-being, isn't it? Of, you know, knowing what works for your body and knowing what works for you, like you say. And, you know, my first question to anybody who comes on the podcast is, when did you spiritually awaken? What's your story? So I guess you've mentioned you do like yoga and meditation and things. So would you class yourself as like awakened?
I mean, look, it's just a term that people, I suppose, if you'd asked me when I was 21, I would have gone, "What's all that bollocks?" You know. And I've never really saw myself as a spiritual person. But then I kind of feel like my attitude is all about positive energy, and I believe I'm not the sort of person necessarily I'm not really into religion, but I don't really, it doesn't bother me. I don't think someone should be judged by their beliefs. I think they should be judged by their actions. Mm-hmm. So if whatever you worship or preach or read or meditate to or whatever helps you become a certain person, if your actions mean well and are positive, I'm all for it. Whatever, whatever you follow, whatever your chakra is, whatever the vibes are. And I wasn't, I've never really been a big reader in terms of fiction, but I love nonfiction. I love facts. And because I do so many flights back and forth between London and Australia, last year I did 22 20-hour flights.
Wow, that's brave.
That's like 400 hours on an aeroplane.
Wow.
And I'm not gonna, make out it's tough. I sit in business class, but I'm all about, reading, stuff just to help, like brain exercises. I'm all about meditation. Sometimes I sit there to get to sleep and I imagine my sons are now 6 and 3, but I imagine them when they were babies asleep on my stomach and trying to, it's like connecting with the breathing, connecting with the thought of their breath being on my face and feeling their heartbeat. And, that really calms me, especially on airplanes, if it's turbulence or I haven't seen them for a month.
Mm.
And I suppose the real awakening came for me was, there's a drum and bass DJ producer who's also an artist, graffiti artist, actor, called Goldie, who's obviously a bit of a legend. If you're into your music, you know him as a drum and bass guy. If you're into your films, you know him as a bad guy in, Snatch and James Bond. And he's a really good friend of mine. And he always used to talk to me about, he's had a really turbulent lifestyle, really turbulent, gangs, drugs, orphanage, like it's written about all in his books. And he kind of spotted me maybe 6-7 years ago when I was on a bit of a destructive path. And he was just like, come and see your Uncle Goldie, mate. You need to go do some fucking yoga, mate. Get the yoga down here. And I was always like, I'm rock and roll. I go to I'm like, I drink pints, I take drugs, I get on stage, I come on stage, I sober up, I go for a run, I go to the gym. That was my whole attitude 10 years ago. And he put me in touch with his yoga instructor and we started doing vinyasa. And then it all came together at once. It's almost like starting to be more sober, starting to write better music, having a better relationship with my parents, being fitter, healthier, stronger, weighing less, eating better. I've always been a cook, but I started cooking even more, trying new things. So that's probably, that was probably 5 years ago, just after the birth of my first son.
Amazing. And I think as well, like, everybody tries to put spirituality in a box of you either look spiritual when you're doing a certain thing, or you must look a certain way, wear a certain thing, do a certain thing. And I think the one thing that I've learned along my journey is that there is no definition of it. It's your own journey, how you feel, and what works for you at the end of the day. So I love that you don't put labels on it. It's what works for you and what feels good for you as well.
Well, I never really realized, but I've always been a bit of a hippie in terms of like, I love trying new things, but I'm also a bit of a free spirit. But I also I love everybody. I love having loads of different friends. I'm all about spreading love and positivity and, donations, charitable donations, helping out random people. I had this thing a few years ago when I was promoting my album, Random Acts of Kindness. I bought a fan a car. I treated a load of people who just got married to a boat party on the Thames to, as part of one of my music videos. I flew some fans to a gig and I treated someone to a holiday, and I guess when I was doing these, I was trying to be clever in terms of marketing way. But then I went and did an interview on Radio 1, and then the DJ was just like, stop, he said, it's all good, you're being humble and all that, but he said, just say it, man. It's like, you're a spiritual guy, you love helping people, you believe in good vibrations and you believe in karma. And I was like, it's true, because I've never been religious, and I'm, it was so funny the other day when the zodiac star signs all shifted, and then there's all this shit about anyone who's believed in this all along, you've been lied to, etc., etc. I mean, I do honestly believe that the more good energy and positivity you give out, the more you get back. And every day, I just try and do at least one good deed a day. Whether that's just calling someone in my family to tell them I love them and ask them how they are, or, you know, I drive around with some thermal underwear in the boot ready to hand out to homeless people. That people really need thermal underwear in Australia, but you know what I mean.
It's the thought that counts.
Yeah,
Definitely.
exactly.
So let's talk about inspirations then. So for me, your music has been an inspiration to me through the darkest times of my life and the lightest times of my life. And I think that's the one thing I love about your music, is that it has guided me through like my spiritual awakening, plus my depression that I had kind of 5 years ago. But even now, in a much better space, I still love all the hits as much as before. So who have been your biggest inspirations in life?
I think growing up, a lot of people don't realize it, but it's usually their parents. You know, some people, a lot of my friends that I went to school with all came from single parent families, and they all kind of worshipped their elder brother or their mum because they didn't have dads around. And I guess I just felt kind of a bit scared to talk about my parents because they were still married with a lot of the kids I went to school with, because probably 90% of them lived on the council estate and were raised by their mum. So it wasn't until I got much older and I looked back on my childhood and realized how fortunate and lucky I was to have both parents at home. I mean, my dad was away working a lot. And sometimes we didn't see him all week, and he'd come back at weekends. But my mum was essentially doing 2 jobs sometimes when he was away for a few weeks. But they're my first real inspiration. They came from quite humble beginnings, working class, and worked their way up onto the property ladder, and like really worked their asses off from a very young age. And a lot of people in our family relied on them as well, you know, for counselling and for finance and help as well. So they were always an inspiration, but I don't think I realized it at the time. Like, it's even that, you know, they're coming into their late 60s now, and you feel the time with them is less and less, but it's more precious because obviously I've got kids now. My parents live in Australia as well. They moved here 15 years ago. And there was like a school teacher. There's 2 actually. There was Mr. Hines, who was our school. I think I really looked up to this guy because he was a bit of a maverick. He was a black teacher in our school in South London. I just loved what he did for a lot of the kids in our school, especially the young black boys who didn't have role models. And he was amazing as a kid because he was a cool teacher as well. And there's another teacher, Mr. Snowden, who was amazing, who, even though I didn't study music at school, I chose art and drama instead of music, but he used to let me use the school music department. And a few of my other friends who I used to rap with when I was like 14, 15, he used to let us stay after school, out of school hours. So he was a big inspiration then. And then I kind of just, you know, just looked up to people along the way that, you know, like Mike Skinner, who signed me back in 2005, you know, not really on a personal level, but on a songwriting level, really inspired me. Dizzy Rascal just inspired me with just sort of how he just like behaved like almost like a heavy metal grunge star, you know, rather than a rap or a grime MC. You know, his whole attitude to everything was very rock. You know, his whole performance style, the way his show was thrown together was quite bombastic. So he was a big inspiration as well. And then meeting my wife, you know, everything from, you know, helping me to exercise more, party less, speak to my parents more, read more. Obviously watching her go through pregnancy and breastfeed our kids and raise our kids for sometimes 5 or 6 weeks when I was away on tour. So, you know, and cut a long story short, those are the sort of key people throughout my life, you know?
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. That so many people from like your school years, your family have all inspired you, definitely. So what led you then to wanting to be an artist and create music?
I mean, I think the main thing was the fear of a 9 to 5. A lot of people I know there's a lot of people who work 9 to 5s who never realized their jobs in the creative world. And for me, it was like, I thought I wanted to be a filmmaker or an actor. And I honestly feel like I could end up in any of them. And I still to this day feel like I could end up doing them. I was always obsessed with music. Like, I religiously would listen to Wu-Tang Clan and Nirvana and Metallica and Tribe Called Quest as a kid. And then I got into UK Garage, and then I got into Jungle, and I just used to learn everybody's lyrics and because it was a Discman or Walkman, you'd only have everything on tape or CD, so you'd just be listening to the same CD sometimes over and over. And I never really thought that would be my lane, because there wasn't really anyone in the UK to look up to, especially in terms of a rapping sense, which is where I started. You know, this was before Mike Skinner, before Dizzy Rascal. You know, there was a small UK hip hop scene with people like Roots Manuva and Skinny Man. But other than that, you know, I suppose like British black music up to that point, the sort of breakout acts would have been something like Soul to Soul. But I guess in the UK, I was a white person making black music with nobody to look up to. Nobody who I was like, they're doing that, I can do that. And I didn't really know how much I wanted to earn or what you needed in life. You know, all I knew from my parents is you had to work hard and that you had to get a mortgage. But, you know, I knew more about film and theatre and acting than I did music. I didn't know how the music industry worked. I didn't know anybody in the music industry. And a lot of my friends that I went to school with, a lot of the kids from council estates, in their minds, they were like, I'm going to, you know, I think things have improved somewhat since then. You know, I'm 38, so I'm going back 22 to 25 years. A lot of them were like, I'm going to be a footballer or a drug dealer. That's how they thought. Or I might be a DJ, you know? But for me, I just kind of felt like I could be anything I wanted to be. I was rubbish at science, but I was really good at maths. I had like summertime jobs doing paint and decorating, but I also worked with my auntie in a bank. And when I was 16, I got offered a full-time job in the bank. And my dad, who'd had a very tough upbringing and worked his way up to really a good position, encouraged me to take the job in the bank. But I guess my mum knew that my future lay in film or music. And I went to university and studied film. But whilst I was at university, I was recording rap demos in the sound booth where they recorded voiceovers for documentaries. So I guess what I'm saying is I've always been like a jack of all trades, master of none. And I quite easily, you could be talking to me now as an actor rather than a rapper or a singer, you know, because when I started singing more, I started making dance music after the hip hop thing didn't work. I started working with more producers who were making dance music rather than hip hop beats. And the guy at Ministry of Sound who signed me was like, look, you're good at rapping and storytelling. I love the sound of your voice. Can you sing? And I was like, well, I haven't sung since I was 13 and my voice broke. I was playing Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And whilst I was up there singing, you know, go, 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 Joseph, you know it, or whatever it was any dream will do. My voice broke during rehearsals. And then I kind of had this fear of singing since I was 14, and then I didn't try it for probably another 10 years after that. Amazing. And it's not like I've got one of the best singing voices ever, but I've got quite a distinctive voice. I think people hear the start of any of my songs and straight away they're like, yeah, there's example.
Yeah, definitely. It's a recognizable voice as well. And I think, like you say, it was probably quite a big deal for you to overcome that fear and be like, right, I'm gonna sing as well now, as well as rapping, and kind of go into, and I think like what you say as well of being a jack of all trades. Like I think when I was growing up, I did acting and performing arts as well, and never did I think that I would be doing what I do today, but all of that has been so valuable because it all contributed to that like stage confidence and, you know, being on stage.
Well, I've never been scared of being on stage. So my mum realized that I was probably a bit ADHD when I was like 7 or 8 years old and disruptive in class, because I'd finish a lot of the assignments really quickly and then have nothing to do. So I was just winding the teacher up or doing impressions of the teacher. And quite smart, my mum realized rather than, you know, tell me off, she'd need to channel my energy into something else, and she put me on stage. And that worked for me even at like 8 years old, and that's carried through until now, you know. And it's been really tough dealing with isolation, not being able to have that outlet of performance, which is really important to me, because I love being on stage more than I love being in the studio. And then, you know, somehow I've ended up recording a whole album in isolation, and everyone, including yourself, really is enjoying it. But just quickly, I meant to ask you, when you said you were depressed, what are some of the songs of mine that I suppose got you through it, or that you felt spoke to you? Because it always amazes me when I write a song about being a cheating bastard 10 years ago, or, you know, not calling my mum enough or spending too many nights in clubs up till late. But then people hear the songs and then tell me what the story means to them. So what's some of your favorites?
Natural Disaster has to be my all-time favorite song. And although the
That's
lyrics,
my eldest son's favorite.
is it? Oh,
Yeah, and he doesn't even know what a natural disaster is, which is amazing.
and I think like although the lyrics aren't the most positive, at the stage of depression, it's the music, it's the beats, it is the music rather than the lyrics, but also the lyrics as well make it for me. So even in my darkest times, it was that outlet of just that like getting everything out. But then also now I listen to it to raise my vibes and to feel positive as well. So I really feel that song can like shift my mood, whatever.
Awesome.
And I think like Change the Way You Kiss Me Again, I loved that one. But I think Playing in the Shadows was the album which particularly was at that time of my life, and that I think as a whole, just all of the songs just spoke to me as such, and was just like, and I feel as well like I don't know for you, you can correct me, but it feels like that was also a transition for you through that album.
Yeah, I think Playing in the Shadows was me coming to terms with, wow, I'm not actually a good person. I was never self-loathing, and I don't think I was ever depressed because luckily for me, I was surrounded by so many people all the time. I was on tour most of those few years. I was doing probably 100 gigs a year. So a third of the year I was on planes and in hotels and partying with people. So you don't really have time to get depressed. And then my days off, I was seeing friends and family or going out and seeing girls and, doing interviews and doing TV shows and rehearsals and then going to the gym and going for a run and then writing songs for the next album. So I was so busy, 2 or 3 years probably felt like a few months. And then I started writing The Evolution of Man, my fourth album, which even in the title itself, Playing in the Shadows is like, the title itself is, I'm in a dark place, whether that's the club or your brain or whatever. But I had all this money coming in, but I didn't really have time to spend it, which was kind of good in a way, because it was just there for me to, when I calmed down, to buy a house and settle down. And then Evolution of Man, there's songs which are like an apology to my ex-girlfriend, like All My Lows. Then there's songs about me realizing I need to be a better person, like the Evolution of Man title track, where the lyrics are, I'm getting better, I'm living better. And then you've got stuff like Crying Out for Help, which is again in the title. Blood from a Stone is in the title. And Perfect Replacement, which was kind of like, it felt a bit mean because on one song I'm apologizing to my ex-girlfriend, and then on the same album I'm saying I've found your perfect replacement. So, but whether that maybe that means that, it could mean that Erin meeting my wife was the perfect replacement for partying as well. So everything has so many different meanings. But I honestly feel like those two albums are the best songwriting I've ever done. And they're kind of like a film, a massive blockbuster film, and with its sequel. That's how they feel to me. They're kind of like part one, part two. Like they could have come out as a double disc album. Evolution of Man is obviously more guitar led, and Playing in the Shadows is more synth led and darker dubsteps, trance. And then I feel everything after that was a bit of a mess and a bit of a blur, because I was so happy in life, in love with Erin, but my music output and quality was questionable. And then kind of got myself back on track with All Night, I suppose, a few years ago. Just the video and the song itself just sort of put me back in everyone's consciousness. Show Me How to Love did the same. And then I've had a sort of a succession of big club bangers. And then this album, Some Nights Last for Days, written and recorded in isolation. And even though it hasn't charted high and so, like I think Playing in the Shadows did like 1 million copies. This album's had like 5 million streams. And I didn't really know what to aim for this new album, but the main thing is everybody who's heard it is like, this speaks to me. It's helping me through isolation. It's lifting my spirits. It's so relatable. It's like, it's helped me through my divorce. It's helped me through being made redundant. It's spiritually awakened me. The amount of DMs I've had thousands of DMs and comments regarding this album, and that kind of made it all worthwhile. And this album was kind of therapy for me. It helped me get through isolation, even though Australia was nowhere near as bad as the UK.
Definitely. And fun fact for you as well, with Perfect Replacement, I was one of the fans in your music video.
Wow.
That was many moons ago.
Are you visible in the video?
Well, no, but I would like to say there's like a glimpse of my head. That's what I always claim.
So that that was done by Emil Nava, directed that. So Emil does all of Calvin Harris's videos
Hmm.
and did most of Ed Sheeran's videos. And I did like 2 or 3 videos with him. And Perfect Replacement was actually amazing. I was so busy on tour that they shot most of the video without me. And I turned up for 1 hour to perform the song 4 times. And then they put me in a car and sent me to the airport or something. That was just like how mental my life was back then. That's the mad thing is when people, I don't even think back then I would have even had time to do podcasts because I wouldn't even had the attention span. I wouldn't have had time to do yoga because I wouldn't have had the attention span. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have had the time to read or to meditate or even to just do breathing exercises, you know?
Hmm.
I was so, when I was, you know, traveling and on stage and sometimes recording, I was high or drunk. And then when I wasn't high or drunk, I was just frantically literally running miles, you know, trying to be as fit and strong as possible and see as many friends and family as possible. I was just this complete, you know, like this cyborg, just fueled on adrenaline and drugs and alcohol and exercise and love and, you know, all these amazing mega like human things.
Yeah.
But now my life now is just like, I suppose it's still rewarding, or even more rewarding, but it's just all revolves entirely around my kids and reading their emotions and their faces and seeing them develop and making them happy and cooking for them and washing their clothes and reading to them and helping them with homework and swimming lessons. And before you know it, the whole day's out.
Mm.
And it kind of feels like 10 years ago when the whole days just disappeared. Like, where
Yeah.
did today go? And now it's like, it's the same, but everything's obviously way more like productive.
Hmm. Definitely. So let's talk about then your decision to leave your traditional kind of record label then. So 2 years ago, you made the decision to leave and release your music independently. So what led you to that decision?
Um, I think that the record industry is a very messed up place. There's some amazing people. There's also a lot of snakes. But maybe that's just life in general. You know, like the film industry, I hear the same. There's loads of good people. There's also lots of disgusting people. You know, there's a lot of sexism still. There's a lot of abuse of power. There's a, you know, I've seen. I wouldn't say I've seen lots of racism, but there's definitely a lot of bigots and there's a lot of egos,
Mm.
and especially at the big labels, you know. Um, and I left Ministry of Sound, who are an independent label, but then eventually they were bought by Sony, where I ended up. I had like 4, 5 really frustrating years there, from like 2013 to 2018. I put out 1 album and then probably 3 singles, and I kept getting passed around, and no one knew what to do with me, and I didn't know what to do myself. I'd lost faith, and I mean, the main things that you got to understand is like in that time, iTunes, where I was, you know, always visible in the top 10, 20 on iTunes for like 3 or 4 years. I had this period where I nearly always had something in the top 10, top 20 albums and singles, which is, you know, an amazing achievement. But then as soon as iTunes changed, then it all became about streaming. There's not many artists who've changed with the times.
Mm.
Obviously, there's your Adele's and Ed Sheeran's and Calvin Harris, but they're on such a scale that it doesn't really matter. It's, you know, you just keep delivering huge songs. I was always like this person who just completely focused on touring. And I think I kind of took my eye off the ball because I'm from the MySpace generation, but I was never really big on MySpace or SoundCloud. And yet iTunes, I was huge on iTunes. You know, that was like my era. And then I kind of was a bit late to Spotify, and I think the label realized I was a bit late to Spotify. And then there's the politics games to play of how do I get on this playlist, and are you still relevant? And people always ask these questions: Are you relevant? Are you credible? Are you relevant? It's all utter bollocks. It's just like, listen to the song. How good's the song? You know what I mean? I'm beyond needing to worry about relevance. Regardless of what I'm talking about in my songs, it's just like, it's just me. I can't really be anything else other than me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was kind of reached this agreement where they were like, look, do you want to leave? And I was like, yeah, I want to leave. And they were like, cool. We won't say we've dropped you if you don't say that you hate us. And it was kind of left like that. And then I set up my own label. And like right now, my return for me and my label and what I choose to give to the people who feature on my songs or produce my songs and write my songs, I get 85%. Whereas when I was on Sony, I was getting 22%.
It's a big difference.
It's a huge difference, and also that when you're on a major label, there's so many people involved. There's like 15 people involved, maybe in a single, with marketing and branding and the music videos and the remixers and the radio pluggers and the TV pluggers and the press people and the online people, and they're all lovely people and they're all doing a job. But essentially, I'm like, I just need my songs played in the clubs, and I might be lucky to get a few spins on Radio 1 or Kiss FM. I've got a great idea for the video. I'm going to direct it and edit it myself. I'm going to put a little bit of ad spend behind it, maybe a few grand. And it's kind of like my own little economy. I understand how to make money and sort of keep my music alive to feed the gig booking. So it's kind of like, I'm like, this is my business model and I'm going to stick to it.
Yeah.
And I answer to me. I decide what songs to put out. Everybody gets paid and treated fairly. I shoot the videos myself for like no money. When you're on a major label, I mean, when we shot probably the music video for Kickstarts and Change the Way You Kiss Me, they were probably spending 40, 50,000 pounds on a video, and there'd be 30 people on set, maybe more. I mean, you said you were there, you saw like the amount of extras and cameras and makeup. And when I shot all night, it's just Erin and I dancing in the living room, and it's had 25 million views, and it cost the bottle of wine to convince Erin to do it. Not every song's going to be as big as All Night, but I'm just happy really, because I mean, I've had 30 gigs cancelled this summer, which is obviously not great because I can afford to miss them, but my manager and my DJ, both got 2 kids. They need to feed their kids and families, so it's tough on them.
Yeah.
And all the people who'd be playing before and around me on the lineups, who might be getting paid £1,000 or £2,000 or whatever, 500 quid to do these support slots, and this money is vital to their existence and to them making more music. So I think I've spent a lot of time reflecting over the last few months about how happy I am to be self-sufficient and out of the label system, but how helpless I feel in not being able to provide enjoyment and escapism for fans, but then B, income for my friends and colleagues.
So was it scary for you then when you did walk away and kind of embark on this adventure by yourself? Did you think, oh God, what am I doing?
No, I mean, look, in one day I just sort of set up everything, administratively speaking, and mechanically, in terms of the royalties and the label and the accounts, and the label's named after my 2 granddads who I never knew, Stan and Eric. I mean, they both died before my first birthday, so I thought it was a nice tribute to them. But the main thing was just like, I was sat on a load of music which I just couldn't wait for people to hear. And when you're like, say you've got a picture that you've taken or a painting you've done, or even if you've just done a really amazing face with makeup, or you've painted your nails, or you've designed a t-shirt, or all these sort of things, whether people class themselves as creative or not, everybody has these little things that they do. You might have built a fucking Lego castle with your son, and you just wish the whole world could see it. And sometimes it's only you and your partner who see it, or you and your mum, or whatever. And I was sat on all these songs which were like my babies, and I was like, no one's getting to hear them. And you're sat in a meeting room, and then the label are like, yeah, I think we should change the kick drum, or lose the ending, or change that word on the chorus. And you're like, fucking shut up, this song's amazing. Or, it's not going to be a #1 single, but let's just put it out. It's a great song. Someone will relate to it. So by the time I set up my own label, I wasn't scared. I was just relieved.
And this
it's like, I can finish a song on a Monday and have it out by Thursday if I want now.
Which is good for you for that creative outlet, isn't it? And I guess this leads
Well,
me
yeah.
on perfectly to my next question is how important is it to you to create authentic music on your terms that feels good to you?
Um, I think that's the key thing is look, like, don't get me wrong. Like, so when I wrote Kickstarts, which was a massive turning point in my career, my creative methods, and like my thought process. I wrote that song on the way back from Glasgow to London in the back of a bus. I think I was supporting Lily Allen at the time, and I was sort of thinking about splitting up with my girlfriend, but I knew she'd kind of want me back, and I'd want her because I was lonely because my parents moved to Australia. And that's kind of like where I came up with the lyric, holding your hand, holding it loose, on Kickstarts. And I played it to the record label, and they're like, this is fucking unbelievable. It's a hit. But then it took 26 versions of that song to get to the one you hear. So the label were this one guy, Dave Dollymore at Ministry of Sound, who's now head of RCA Records at Sony. He was very good at kind of letting me go out and do what I wanted, but then refining my songs so well. So they were like, sounded like global hits.
Hmm.
And I think maybe the only thing I'm lacking now is that I know I can still write a banger. And I kind of like, I chatted to Ed Sheeran about this. It's like, whenever I'm winning with him, we play each other's songs a lot. And I might play him 20 songs and he'll only think one of them's amazing. And I'm like, I think 10 of these are amazing. He's like, nah. And he'll play me 20 songs, but he's usually written 100 songs to get 5 amazing ones. And he's like one of the best in the world. So writing songs is like going to the gym. You just like practice, and it's like muscle memory and fitness.
Mm.
So I kind of feel like if I keep this output coming of songs, invariably every now and again one of them's going to be a fucking absolute monster. And I kind of felt like we got that with Show Me How to Love and All Night. They're probably my 2 best songs of like the last 3 years. So I'm kind of just like, I know I can deliver these songs, but what I'm missing is what I had at Ministry of Sound, where this guy David Dollymore was like refining. Sometimes we record a demo, and then the one you hear on Spotify is maybe version 9.
Mm.
I'm sometimes thinking that sometimes it's version 26 or version 31 or version 90, as in just keep making the mix better, or go and re-record my vocal or change that word. And I think it's a combination of being impatient and just wanting to get the song out, laziness, maybe because I'm on the time difference between London and Australia. It's like I go to bed and I'm not in the studio with that person, so I'm not there with the engineer and producer with the same energy to complete it. Mm-hmm. Or it's just sort of like just feeling like I've been doing this for 15 years now. I know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily think any of them are bad, because I'm not disappointed with the quality of my songs, but it's just great to just go, I really like this song right now. It's making me happy. My kids are dancing to it. My mum likes it. My wife likes it. My manager thinks it's great. Let's just stick it out. I'm sure someone in the clubs are going to play this. The counter argument might be, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. Why don't you just take a break from music and just really refine your songwriting and the music production and mix down, so when you come back with something, it's as big as Change the Way You Kiss Me, and it blows everyone away. So it's it's 2 sides of the coin. It's like, I don't know if I'm ever going to have a global hit again. I mean, what even is a hit nowadays? Sometimes it's not even a number 1, but it might have 100 million streams.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is I'm so happy right now with family and life and my health and fitness, and obviously all these gigs cancelled this year, but last year I did 60 odd gigs, great festivals, headlining dance stages or second on the main stage or whatever. A few gigs to Eastern Europe and Ibiza. It's like, sometimes you have to pinch yourself. You're like, I'm still doing this after, 15 years. The first 8 years of those 15 years, I was broken, not finding any success, and I was told in 2009 I wouldn't ever be played on Radio 1. Mm. So some people are like happy, with one hit, and then they disappear, and they're like, well, at least I gave it a go. I don't really know what my goals are. I don't know if I'm going to get back to arenas. I don't know if I'm going to headline festivals again. I don't know if one day I could play stadiums, but I've never overthought it. So
Definitely. And I think with that positive energy, you never know what could happen. Because I think, you know, you've surprised
Exactly.
yourself with your
I've
latest
surprised
music.
myself with everything up to this point. So I'd rather just keep making music I love that means something to me, and then I know will mean something to my fans, and then just be like, wow, that was the one that I wasn't expecting. And we've, you know, I don't sit there and make music to get more Instagram followers, you know?
Yeah. Good. I'm glad with that one. So, what advice do you have for any creatives or business owners who are struggling to get their authentic voice or message heard with traditional routes? So, this could be like publishing, poetry, music. Like, what advice do you have for them?
I think the most, see that if I was someone who like had, you know, a classic soul voice and I was regarded as one of the best singers in the world, then my answer would probably be quite different to what I'm going to say. And my answer is like I've always been so unique. I feel like not tried to be unique. I've just been me. You know, my when I first came out, the way I dressed, when way my hair looked, you know, my big goofy teeth, like my sense of humor, which seemed a bit the opposite of the dark gothic sort of moody songs I was writing. And it was a voice that you didn't really hear in the clubs. It wasn't a soulful voice. And then I rapped a bit, and I didn't sound like, you know, Dizzy Rascal. And I didn't have a master plan for this, but I had good people around me who just encouraged me to be myself.
Hmm.
Like my mum encouraged me to be myself at a very young age. And you know, when I'd be bullied at school, and then I got bullied at college, and a little bit at university, or just like general banter and piss taking, but I never let it harm me. I was always really thick-skinned,
Hmm.
and I just think whatever you do, like I can only advise people who want to stand out from the crowd. And some people have great success being generic and giving people what they want, and that's fine because people need that as well. But I can only really speak for people who are like me, who are like rogues, who are mavericks, who are just like, you know, the black sheep, you know, that kind of vibe. I was always a classroom clown, and I was always concerned with how I looked and trying to impress people. And the moment I stopped worrying about impressing people and just worrying about what made me happy, everything fell into place. The
Hmm.
moment I stopped writing songs for radio and wrote songs for me, I started writing the best songs again. The moment I didn't sit there and overthink a music video, I'd wake up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet, and then as I'm walking back to the bed, I get an idea for a music video, and I just sit there and write it down on my phone, and then I'm like, oh, what's the album cover going to be? And then all of a sudden, I'm just out one day and I see an advert on a billboard, and it just comes to me. And not everybody's like that, but for me, I'm very impulsive,
Hmm.
and I guess what I'm saying is do everything yourself.
Hmm.
If you can do everything yourself effectively, um, you know, you get to a point where you start building your team of people around you, whatever job or industry you do. If they can see that you can do every single bit of that, you know what I mean? It's sort of like the respect you have, but also your confidence in yourself in guiding people. It's like, you know, I'm in a studio with someone. I'm not as good at playing piano as the guy producing, but I might jump up on a piano and play a little riff. And they're like, whoa, that's fucking catchy as fuck. And then you're on set with the camera guys and you're like, maybe we should switch the lens to this over here. And all these sort of things. I don't know, not everybody can learn these skills, but for me, it's just like, I'm just so eager to learn new things and better myself. And I'm just so adventurous. I've got so much energy for life. I just want to constantly go out there and discover and find new things.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm now running a business, but my understanding of stats and streams and income, and I can pretty much price up a gig going into it, like with flights and costs and trucks and hotels and taxes and insurance and fees for my DJ and lighting and visuals guy before I've even done the gig. So I got I got into music because I love creating, but my business brain is just there all the time. And I know some people who go to a gig and they don't even know what they're getting paid for it, or
Yeah.
they might be getting 50 grand a gig, but they've flown 15 of their mates to get there and they're getting a private jet home. And I'm like, you know, you spent your whole fee, and they're like, no, I got 50 grand. The private jet was 15 grand. I'm like, yeah, what about your manager who's taking 20% and your agent is taking 10% and you're splitting it with your other DJ and then you're paying 50% tax? Oh yeah, yeah, I'm going to lose money on this gig. Yeah, you are. And And then they come to Australia and they see my house and like, so and they're like, fucking hell. So yeah, I don't have a Rolex.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Well, it sounds like you're a
I
great
don't take
business.
private jets everywhere. I still wear free clothes that I'm sent, and I bought a couple of silly cars, but I sold them for more money than I made. And I love trainers, but I don't really go out and buy them. I just hustle and get sent them, and I shoot a music video for $1,000, and it looks like it cost 10 grand.
Well, perfect businessman then, definitely. So let's
No,
talk
I
about
mean, my advice is just like think like me. No, my advice is to just hustle where you can. It's
definitely.
not about being it's using people, because I've never used people. I always, if anything, I give anyone I come across, I give them bonuses, and I treat them more fairly than I've ever been treated. It's more just being smart,
Yeah,
you know.
definitely.
And when people, and I see people a lot when they do interviews, like whether it's filmmakers or songwriters, they say, yeah, I'm 50% business minded, 50% creatively. And then you get people go, oh, well, that's not being a true artist. It's like, well, no, fuck it is in this day and age. So
Mm.
otherwise you end up having no success potentially. And then you're one of those people who are like, I could have been that, but I didn't do that. And it's like, well, you've got to understand both sides of the coin. It's like,
Yeah.
it doesn't distract from your ability as an artist to stand up there and say, I'm a really fucking proud businessman.
Yeah.
And I really, really have a lot of faith in my understanding of how this industry works, and the mechanics of streaming and how much royalties I get. And I know before I even look at my earnings for the year, I've got a rough idea in my head of how much I'm going to get after tax.
Yeah. And that's always a good
Um,
thing to have.
yeah, and there's just so many people who are like, they have an amazing product, or they have an amazing name for their business or for their DJ name. And then but then all the really simple things, you just think, how have you fucked it up so badly? And I just try and help them. I'm not laughing at them. I'm trying to help them.
So let's talk about your new exciting album then. So
Exciting album.
what inspired you to create and release an album, which is Some Nights Last for Days, during lockdown?
Well, let me firstly tell you about the name quickly, because actually I don't think I've revealed this yet. It says it on the CD cover, and then we only did like 1,000 CDs as a limited edition. But when my wife was giving birth to our first, Evander, who's going to be 6 at Christmas, I was like, so Shazza. She was like, don't call me Shazza, Elliot. It's Sharon. So yeah, so Sharon, how long do these things usually take? She was like, what? I was like, the birth. She went, well, Elliot, could be aired in a few minutes, but some nights last for days. And I was like, that's fucking brilliant. I'm going to use that one day for a song or an album. So this is sort of like an idea that I've always wanted to be sat on. An idea I've been sat on that I've always wanted to release. And then when isolation sort of happened, I got back to Australia on March the 10th. My last gig was London Forum, March the 7th, sold out, perfect night to the end of the tour. Professor Green and Retry 2 came out on stage. All my best friends were there, from school and university and the industry. And when I got back home, and then it was like everybody else's tour was cancelled. Like the day I got back to Australia, all my Australian gigs were cancelled. And then a week later, it was like, stay in your house. You can't leave your house. You can leave for an hour's exercise with your kids every day.
Yeah.
And it was a gift and a curse, because it was like I hadn't seen my family for 5 weeks, but now I get to see my kids all day, every day. Amazing. Obviously, they sent us wild after a few weeks. So loving that. And then I was just like, I posted a freestyle of me rapping in the car, which became Paper Clips, which is track 1 on the album, like the album intro. And it had 100,000 views in a day and 1,000 comments. And everyone's just like, oh, do more rapping, do more freestyle. So I did another one, and then another one. And then I just said to my manager, can we get some beats knocked up? So I had a few riffs where I was like humming piano chords into a voice note that my producer back in England, he's the same guy who's done like All Night and Click and Do It So Well. He'd done all my recent singles. He was knocking up beats, sending them to me. I was writing a chorus, recording it in a studio over here, obviously not touching the engineer and sanitizing and whatever. And then sending it back to the UK, and then they send it back to me, and I'd record a verse, and I send it back there, and then I'd message Calvin Harris in LA, have you got any beats knocking around? He was like, oh yeah, I've got some leftover beats from funk while volume bounces, whatever. So he'd send me a few beats, and then in the space of 8 weeks, we had a whole album.
Incredible.
And even though there's like probably 4 or 5 tracks which were sat around maybe for the last 2-3 years, like Chronicles and Break the Chains were like demos that I thought were brilliant but weren't right for what I was doing. So we sort of resurrected them, improved them, re-recorded, mixed them better, mastered them. And then there was 10 brand new tracks, all with features on where I was just texting people like, "Oi, have you got access to a microphone?" "Nah, but it's you, so I'll drive an hour to record it for you." And then here you have this album which somehow feels like it speaks about COVID and quarantine, but also deals with, I don't know, being stuck in a room with someone you love and going crazy, and is the world really okay? Are we ever going to get through this? Are we too fucked up now at this point?
Yeah.
Are we beyond repair?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Some Nights Last for Days is not only testament to, how isolation can just last. I was FaceTiming so many people in England who were sat in 1-bedroom apartments with their partners, just like going mad. Like it didn't matter how many push-ups they were doing or how healthy they were trying to eat or how much yoga they were doing or meditation or sleeping or trying to get fresh air or reading. They were like, we tried having sex all day. That was good for a day. Now we hate each other. We tried home cooking for a week, but now we just want to eat Domino's all day, every day. We tried being sober for a week, but now we're drinking a bottle of Jack Daniels a day. We think we want kids. We think we want a divorce. We think we want kids. We think we want a divorce. We've seen every film on fucking Netflix, So in Australia, it wasn't so bad. We've got a decent sized home, got a garden and a swimming pool, and we were allowed out the house quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we were missing the time that the kids were at school to have adult time, we were coping.
Yeah.
But then most of the lyrics that I was writing were inspired by aforementioned people back in England just going, "Oh, I think I'm a drug addict. Oh, I think I hate my wife. Oh my God, I'm eating so much pizza. I need a haircut." This sort of shit. As I'm sure you can relate to some of that, or people who,
Yeah, definitely. So one quick question then before you have to leave us today. What is one piece of life advice that you would like to leave my listeners with?
Oh my God, haven't I given enough already?
You have, but any other pearls of wisdom?
I just think try everything once,
Mm-hmm.
When you see that film Yes Man,
Mm-hmm.
with Jim Carrey, I know it's like a stupid analogy, but I don't know. Look, put it this way, I don't eat seafood, and I tell everyone I'm allergic, and it's bullshit. I'm not allergic. I just hate the smell and taste of it. But everything outside of that, I give a go. Whether it's bungee jumping or skiing or swimming with sharks, getting into a cage with great whites around you, or, I made homemade naan bread the other day, and it was the best fucking thing I've ever had. And, visiting places you've never ever been before, and a film that you just think that's absolutely not me, or, a style of music that I never thought that I'd make, or just shaving your head. These sort of things. The enjoyment you get out of, because a lot of people always come to me and they go, "Look, I've been offered this, I've been trying. What do you think I should do?" "Just try it, man."
Yeah.
And they're like, "But it's this, but it's crazy. It's fucking," I'm like, "Fucking go for it."
Mm-hmm.
And I really think I kept putting off trying yoga for so long, and then I tried it, and then after the first one, I was like, "I'm not sure." And I think by probably the 6th or 7th session, I was hooked, and it was life changing in a way, because it was like it allowed me to recover so much better from touring, from bouncing around on stage, from long flights, from training too hard, from injuries, from stress. And I just, everyone needs to find their equivalent of that.
Yeah.
There's only, you can listen to podcasts and watch films all day and listen to albums all day, but you need to find this thing. And it's usually to do with, I don't know, just self-preservation, isn't it? In terms of like, your breathing, your health, your skin, your oxygen intake, how much sunlight you're getting. These are all things that I would have laughed about 10 years ago. And you know, these are just things that I swear by now. You know, even just talking earlier about, you know, jumping out the sauna into a freezing cold pool, back into the sauna into a freezing cold pool. I just like, felt invigorated afterwards. It's like better than a coffee.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Elliot, for this today. It's been such a
Thank
pleasure
you, Emma.
having you on, and obviously getting to chat with you and hear your amazing advice. So thank you so much for coming on, Elliot.
I hope your listeners have loved it. And we'll do this again in a few years, maybe.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.